Hello, my name is Owen, and welcome to what I'll be reading in the month of October 2024. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's a little bit late. We're almost a third of the way through the month. And you know what? Sometimes you just got to settle in to the month a little bit before you know the direction you're truly heading, all right? No, nothing wrong with sitting back and thinking about things a little bit, guys. You don't have to be so hasty, okay? Slow it down a notch. Enjoy the present. But we got an exciting month planned. In some ways, it's just as ambitious as our September was, which I nailed, by the way. And in some ways, it's just a little different is all. But the standards out of the way, we are reading part 2 of Malazan, reread book 5, Midnight Tides, part 2 of Midnight Tides. So we will be reading that. We'll be doing video on that. That is a priority because I've been promising it for like 5 months now. It will be done. Part 2 video will be coming out shortly. And then we're also doing our reread of the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. We're in Words of Radiance, book 2. It's a long book, but I'm speeding through it. I'm about 30% of the way there, around 300 pages into that book. And we're making good progress, so that'll be done as well. But that's not the exciting stuff, because you already knew I was doing that. The exciting stuff, we got a wide variety of books we're reading. Firstly, we're reading a thriller. It's called Their Vicious Games by Joelle Wellington. Knew nothing about this book, but the same friends that I read The Poppy War with, we decided to change genres a bit, keep our little trio going, and we're reading a thriller, kind of a deconstruction of the horror genre. The final girl trope is what it seems like to me. I have not started it, but you know what? I love a good thriller, and hopefully it's good stuff. I have no expectations for it. So we're reading that, and then we're also diving into a long pushed off read that I've been very excited for, but just never had the chance to do it. The Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas. We're going back to basics, aren't we? With the classic, The Three Musketeers. Some of you may know, longtime friends of the channel may know, that The Count of Monte Cristo was our book of the year for the year 2022, all the way back then. So I have not read any other of his books. This is the one I picked up over a year ago now, and we're finally going to get around to reading it. I cannot be more excited to, and I don't want to rush this, right? We're kind of rushing through Stormlight just because we read it before. We want to get all those books in before December. This is a decent length book. It's around 600 pages. I know it'll be a little bit denser because it's a classic. It's an old style written. I understand that. I want to savor this book. So I want to start it as soon as I can, as soon as I can get Malazan done and get that wrapped up, because it's not a super long part, only around 200 pages to finish that up. I'm going to focus very, very heavily on The Three Musketeers. I expect that thriller, Their Vicious Games, will be a little bit of a lighter read, so this is the priority for this month. Enjoying it, appreciating it, worshiping it, loving it, caring for it, starting a family with it. Perhaps, stranger things have happened, maybe, I don't know. I'm very excited to read this book. I expect great things from Dumas, and simply can't wait to read it. But that's not it. No, because once you dip your toe into pretentiousness, you got to dive all the way in. And also, if I have the time for it, let's be honest, everything after The Three Musketeers is if we have time. That's 4 books. No, it's not. It's 3 books and then a part of another book. So still a lot of pages we're trying to get through this month. But if we get through Three Musketeers, I also want to deep dive into Shakespeare's Macbeth. And this is one of the old books that I got back on Christmas last year. I made a video on these books. This one was published in 1898. Obviously, Shakespeare didn't write it in 1898, you idiots. This is like a school edition of that. So I thought it'd be fun to read one of these super old books that I got. And Macbeth is one of the plays of Shakespeare that I have not yet read. So it'd be fun to dive into that and pour over that text. The only thing with Shakespeare is when I'm reading one of his plays, first of all, I like to see them over reading them. But if I'm just reading it, like when I encountered Hamlet for the first time, I did just read it before I saw it. So I like to do a lot of secondary research alongside it, like critiques, or maybe not critiques, but like analysis, explorations of them, really is like companion pieces to it. So it's a little bit of a different reading process than just like reading the pages, because I mean, maybe there's some geniuses out there, but me, like, first run Shakespeare, I'm like, bro, like, speak English, am I right? And I expect, like, an 1898 edition of his play won't be the most approachable way to do this. Because, you know, sometimes you'll get a Shakespeare edition where it's, like, annotated, they get helpful, like, clarifications, translations, contexts, historical contexts, things like that. If this does have that, which I don't know that it does, it'll be in the context of 150 years ago. So not very helpful, in my opinion. But we're going to do this anyway. But I'm going to try to find some secondary sources to help guide along this process. I'm just, on a side note, on a personal note, I'm in a Shakespeare mood, guys. I recently saw A Midsummer Night's Dream, fantastic play. They did kind of like a modern interpretation of it, which, I'm not a Shakespeare purist, so I kind of like these takes on them. In my opinion, there's always going to be the classical rendition of Shakespeare in his plays. Shakespeare scholars may disagree that modern interpretations are good at all. But you know what? I think it makes it more approachable for people who have no entry point, right? Because what I'm about to do with this book, just reading it straight up dry, it's hard to do. It takes a lot of brain power. And like I said, I got to do secondary sources and people's studying of it given to me secondarily in order to understand it. So, I don't blame people who don't want to just straight up read Shakespeare. And for that reason, the plays, if you're trying to make them more translated, more modern day, if it's well done, it's well done. That's my opinion about it. And that has really nothing to do with reading books. It's more about theater, but I just thought I would share. Because I have a lot of opinions about things, and sometimes I don't get to say them all, okay? Videos are only 10 to 20 to 30 minutes long. How much could I possibly say in that time? Probably more if I spoke a little bit faster. Should I try speaking a little bit faster? Because sometimes I feel like I talk a little bit slow. But if for some reason we finish Macbeth as well and we read all those secondary sources, we want to keep reading because we love reading. And I'm going to read All of Kitteridge by Elizabeth Strout. What is this book? Well, it was given to me for my birthday by a good friend who said that they really enjoy this book. So you know what? I don't know anything about it. Seems like a nice piece of calm literary fiction about a retired school teacher in Crosby, Maine. Sure, why not? Because you know what? One thing I like to do, guys, I like to spice things up. And obviously, we're deep in the trenches of fantasy, right? We're doing a lot of rereads of long books. And in some cases, like especially last month too, we were rereading those books and we were reading Poppy War on top of that, and we read Mordu on top of that. It's a lot of fantasy, guys. And as much as I love fantasy, sometimes you just need a palate cleanser. And sometimes when you haven't gone with a palate cleanser for a long time, you just got to throw everything at the wall just to see what sticks. So we got a thriller. We got a nice piece of literary fiction, more modern. We got an ultra classic in the form of The Three Musketeers. We got an ultra classic in the form of Shakespeare's play Macbeth. How much of this are we going to get through, right? Because we don't. Here's the thing, and this is those are the things I'm going to read this month. All right, you got your videos worth. Now this is the part where we really get into the nitty gritty of things. How do we balance, as readers as a whole, making it not feel like work versus what we feel like we should be doing, right? Because obviously I put upon myself this Brandon Sanderson Stormlight reread. Obviously I put upon myself this Stephen Erickson Malazan Book of the Fallen reread, right? And to say I'm consistent from Malazan would be a lie, because I announced that back in June of last year, so it's been well over a year at this point, and we're on the 5th book, part 2. But one thing I really strive not to do is give myself these challenges and then be burnt out on these things. And then when I was on Jimmy Nutt's show, which I was on his show, guys, if you didn't notice that, he asked me, he's like, "Are you worried you're going to get burnt out of Stormlight right before the 5th book?" At the time, I was like, no way. And I really still don't think so, but I don't want to push myself on reading Words of Radiance, on reading Malazan, so that I feel like, oh, I have to finish this book this month, so I gotta read 800 pages of a Stormlight book before the end of the month. That's where things start to get a little bit tricky. And I'm starting it right now. What I'm talking about right now is that I recognize that I have a lot to do this month, that I have to do with my rereads. I don't have to do any of them. I just recognize that that's the case. So I think that by adding these off-the-wall books, I have no preconceived notion of them, like the Vicious Games by Joelle Wellington, like All of Kitteridge, and even to a certain extent Macbeth. I'm just going in for it just for a breath of fresh air. And Three Musketeers, I have a lot of high hopes for it. I really want to deep dive into it, but I don't want the distraction of I have to read Stormlight, I have to read Malazan. So it's going to be it'll be the test of the month to see the balancing act of how I can do this, right? Of how I can finish those in a timely way. We're already a third of the way through the month. We're not really close to finishing Words of Radiance. We got 100 pages left in the Malazan reread. it'll be a challenge. It's the context in which we set up the month, right? It's not just the books I'm going to read. It's how I'm going to do it, guys. That's what's important. So personally, I'm curious how this will end up. And I want you guys to know, let me know in the comments, like, if let's just say you're in a series, right? And you feel like you owe it to the series to finish it. Maybe you're on book 5 of 12, right? Well, I got to read to book 12. Do you like to intersperse different genres in there? Or are you a one genre Andy? Maybe you're a one genre Andy. But the good thing about reading is that there's infinite books out there, or a seemingly infinite amount of books. And in that way, there's seemingly infinite genres, seemingly infinite styles of writing. And I think it's important to vary, to have a variance of those things, to vary what you're reading. And this will be a good test for me. It'll be a good test. It's not my most ambitious month of all time, because I don't plan on finishing this book this month. I don't even necessarily plan on finishing this book this month. So we might end up with a lesser book count, maybe a similar page count, just because it's a volume of things. But it'll be interesting to see how my brain reacts to this, because I could very well see a possibility where we end October and I'm done with rereads. We're taking a break from Malaz. We're taking a break from Stormlight. Maybe that's the case. I hope it's not the case. But we're going to see how it's going to turn out. Right now, I'm feeling energized. I'm feeling good. Words of Radiance is a great book. Midnight Tides is a great book. And hopefully these are all great books as well. And I look forward on bringing you along with the ride, guys. And that's really all I got to say. We said a whole lot of nothing in this video, but it's a lot of books, a lot of genres. Very excited. It's reading time. It's reading time. Is that my new catchphrase? It's reading time? No, it's not. I'll never say that again. You have my word. Be sure to like and subscribe if you like the video and you want to see more like in the future. And as always, here's my catchphrase. Thanks for sticking around.